All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me on the High Ground podcast. This is super awesome. I'm excited to talk Vader. This is all things Vader. And as Travis's shirt says, Vader is a choking hazard. So tread lightly. I want to start by kind of going around the circle, and I just do clockwise. I don't know if the orientation is the same for everyone, but for me, it would go to Travis. But we'll start by asking, who are you, and a little bit about your history with Star Wars, but mostly about, what is it about Vader? Why is Vader such a badass? How is he, in my opinion, the greatest cinematic villain of all time? I don't feel anyone else tops him. Not that he's my favorite villain. I love Doctor Doom, but cinematic villain, got to give it to Vader. Anyways, Travis, your thoughts?
Okay. Right after that, I was gonna say you should have like a Maz Kanata little meme, like "Who are you?" Whenever we have that question. This is like my fourth time answering it, but my my name's Travis. For anybody who's just now meeting me via Darth Chocolate, I've been on his podcast a few times. My background is, I was raised around Star Wars loving family. I was like in the 90s, I had, watched the originals. And as they came out in the special edition in 1997, it was just, I was just having the time of my life when seeing those in the theaters. I feel like really privileged that I was with the Phantom Menace, everything just, that just blew my mind. The prequels, I've always loved them. I know that there's criticisms, there's certain things that I wanted to see that I didn't see in the prequels, but for the most part, they just, you start to appreciate them more and more as they age. And so, yeah, Star Wars has just been really important to me because I'm an artist, I'm a musician, and Star Wars is one of the franchises. There are a few that really coalesce art and science fiction, and I'm a science geek. So that, and also music, like all in the same just world, surrounding each other and intermingling. And it's just, for me, it's like the ultimate creation. And it's inspired me because I'm a writer as well as an artist, to do something just maybe 1% of what George Lucas has accomplished, and John Williams combined with Doug Chang and all the artists. Anyway, that's my ramble of who I am. But Darth Vader, to me, he is the iconic not only villain but main character of the saga. And there are very few, if any, characters or personas in pop culture or fiction that are larger than Darth Vader. And it's very much earned. You have David Prowse and I don't know why I'm I almost said Samuel Jackson. Oh no, I'm already gonna get hate on that. Okay, but you know what I'm saying. Darth Vader, he's just amazing. And let's talk Vader. Let's talk some Vader.
All right, Pep.
So my name is Pep. I am at _element7_ on TikTok. I make a lot of educational videos on Star Wars, and I answer a lot of questions, and I try to get people to learn more about Star Wars every day. My history of Star Wars, My older brother came home with the VHS one day. It was A New Hope, and it just skyrocketed from there. I just went down the rabbit hole. Star Wars was probably my first brush with fantasy worlds and mythology, and like everything about the Jedi and the Sith and the Force just propelled my mind into everything I know about what I insert into design, narrative, and writing as a game developer. And that's it. It's just like everything about Star Wars is like it's like a puzzle. You know, at first you don't see the whole picture, right? And Dave Filoni and Lucas has come out and said this many, many times. They don't give it to you because the best thing about Star Wars is speculation, right? And so they'll have comics, books, and they'll have the Clone Wars and all kinds of accompanying media that fill in those puzzle pieces that are missing. And then once that final puzzle piece is in there, you're like, now I get it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason why I make the videos that I do, is so that I get that one comment every like 2 weeks. It's like, you know, after seeing your video, I have a new perspective on either the sequels or the prequels, and now someone new can appreciate these things. As for Vader, he is probably the only, if not the only, one of the only villains that can command a space with no words said, right? And he's the only villain that you know it like shit's about to go down when you hear him breathing. So a lot of villains have like, you know, these iconic monologues and they have their signature catchphrases, but it's like perfect example in recent memory is Fallen Order when I was playing that. And, you know, Trilla is there. She's like, you know, having a moment with Seer, and then it's just, I was like, whoa, what is he doing here? And that is like the exact reaction you get every time Vader steps on screen. And that's also the reason why I put Anakin in my number 8 spot in my ranking. And people were like freaking out. I was like, why is Anakin getting so much hate? Because I did my Sith ranking because Vader is up there. I like him more as Vader instead of Anakin.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's one of the big reasons I wanted you to come onto this episode too, is that ranking. And then we have Victoria Vader here. If that last name doesn't tell you who she likes. Yeah, same question for Victoria.
I'm Victoria, and I swear my cheeks are going to be hurting by the end of this. They already are, because I'm just so happy to be here. It's Victoria, y'all, on TikTok. I got into Star Wars as something that like my entire family could come together on. We went to Star Wars Weekend 2006. It was a great time. And I just really enjoyed having something to do to engage my entire family. Like my dad, my mom, my little brother, and me, we were all able to come together on to this interest. And so I was just enchanted with the universe of Star Wars. Beyond that, as like an adult and looking into how beautiful Star Wars is, I appreciate its lyricism. And as we've mentioned before, it's like the expansiveness of this universe is just unmatched. It's so beautiful, as you're mentioning about the puzzle and like new pieces to the puzzle every single day. And there's always something to learn, something new to see. And so I love that about Star Wars. I vividly remember seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters. And so I grew up in that era of Star Wars. I remember wearing Leia buns and a Darth Vader shirt to school. So it has definitely been a part of like my family growing up. But about Darth Vader. So throughout this podcast, we'll talk about him and his, impact on a larger scale. So I kind of want to talk personally why he's so significant to me. And I do a lot of thinking about this. So fiction, it allows a consumer agency on how they process the information. And so with Darth Vader, I think he falls into the category of like how I can process his story in my real life. I'm obviously not relating to him or idealizing any moral greatness that he possesses, which is also the function of fictional characters. But for Darth Vader, to me, he represents in a larger scale that anything can be conquered, any darkness can be overcome. And that just was so beautiful to me. And I think that's why it's so impactful in the long run, is that he's mutable to be the face of both the darkest evil you know, and the conquering of that, the redemption, the light that you can find. And so I guess growing up Darth Vader, I was able to like project anything bad onto him and see that I could conquer that. And so to me, I see Darth Vader and I see hope, because it makes me remember anything can be conquered. I don't know. That's cheesy.
That's awesome.
No, it's not cheesy.
It's
I love
profound.
it. Yeah, exactly. And you know, no one in the Star Wars universe thinks of Vader and thinks of Hope. But
right.
I do appreciate that experience. Yeah, and then for me, you know, thinking about it, and especially how Pep mentioned the puzzle, Star Wars to me has always been like an onion, right? It's about layers, yeah. And at its most basic layer, it's a young adolescent's power fantasy. Really, is the outside layer, but there is so much love and thought process and history and lore making and research and understanding went into building this universe that, you know, when you're little and you see this, yes, you see this, the power fantasy, like, oh, I would have superpowers and all this stuff. And then you get a little older and you go in a layer and you're like, oh, there's extra stuff here. And you get older, you go in another layer, and you just keep going down, and I still find stuff that I'm like, wow. I just, like, just today, I, you know, learned that in all 3 acts of Empire Strikes Back, Luke at some point is suspended upside down, and he has to use the Force to, in that predicament, and how that advances the story, and how, I don't know, it's just, there's so many, you know, he's upside down hanging from the ceiling in Hoth, right? Mm-hmm. He's upside down doing a handstand when he's training with Yoda, and he's upside down at the bottom of the Cloud City, and when he has to reach out with Leia, and you're just like, that's a thing that they did on purpose.
Yeah,
that's
awesome.
Star Wars rhymes.
It just goes deeper and deeper every freaking time.
I love how you mentioned onions, because once you get deep enough, you can start crying.
And it's okay to cry. But yeah, if you don't want to cry, you can hold a piece of bread in your mouth and it absorbs it. I don't know, that's a whole thing.
Life hack.
Things you learn.
Yeah. All right, so first thing is I just want to talk about overall design. I mean, you don't have to know everything about like how Vader came about, but I don't know. He just cuts such an imposing figure, and I just want to take a minute to talk about the design of Vader and his lightsaber and all that stuff. And if we can start with Pep.
Well, the thing that strikes me is with Vader's design is how simple his silhouette is, because lots of, you know, villains of yore and even today have silhouettes where there's horns and huge gaudy shoulder pads, and his is just practically, well, I don't want to talk about like the other things it resembles, but it's a simple shape, but it's so commanding that you know immediately that that's Darth Vader and that's no one else. It can't be anyone else with a helmet and a cape. It's Darth Vader. And in terms of the face, you know, when I first watched Star Wars, I thought his helmet and his face mask looked ridiculous. But the older I got, you know, the more menacing it looked, and just how, I don't know, how evil of a feeling it gives off on first glance.
Yeah, it just like, empty eyes, not doing anything.
The big bulging eyes.
Yeah. And then also, I gotta say, I actually do love the classic red lenses from the original, but that's a whole different topic. But Victoria?
One thing I love about Darth Vader's character design is from the beginning, he was designed to embody both the universal and the specific. So his costume in itself, with the helmet being inspired by like the Japanese samurai and the face mask being of the like Mempo tradition of, yes, protecting the face, but also being like scary, is like a psychological torture weapon. And then his capes were monk capes or from like a nomadic tribe. And his bodysuit was a military uniform from the German trenches in World War I. And so just having these universal elements, but also very specific elements, I think is really beautiful in his character design, not only physically, but ultimately, like as the story goes on, the more we learn about him embodying both very specific details of having a very complex, unique story, but also being a universal character and relating to universal ideas. So another thing I really, really loved in his early design is the fact that like, there's like, I made a note on this, that the first time he's written about is like the idea of being conjured through the wind, coming in on the wind. And so I thought that was a really beautiful kind of metaphor of his presence, like you were saying earlier, Pep, about how he's in the scene when he's not in the scene, like when he's not speaking, his presence is commanding. And in the 1976 novelization, there's an F alliteration to describe him, like, and it says flowing black robes on a figure, face forever masked. And so those F sounds sound like his respirator, so like the F sound. And so just the idea of conjuring him as this kind of almost otherworldly mist is really beautiful. And then just kind of going further into like his actual portrayal, how the people that played him always said, don't get in the way of the character. Like James Earl Jones, there's a quote that says, I did not want to get in the way of the character. And so Darth Vader is himself. And with him being faceless, it's interesting because he's not an actor or anyone who portrayed him throughout all of history. He is Darth Vader, and that is his identity. And I really think that's beautiful.
I also didn't notice like until later on that he still had Anakin's tunic like around his suit.
That's amazing.
Oh, I'll have to
like the cloth that's around his mechanical part of like that chest part, that's his black tunic, but it's not crossed. It's just he's still wearing it.
That's amazing.
Oh, no, I mean, I can't top anything anyone said, but his, just like you said, his silhouette being so recognizable, it just makes me think of the illustrations for the Phantom Menace, where it was Anakin as a child, but the shadow on the wall was Vader's. And the same thing about when in Attack of the Clones, when he gets on the speeder to go out to do the Sand People, but his silhouette is Vader's silhouette. And it's just that type of like iconography that makes it the character so unique. And like you were saying, Victoria, Vader is his own character. I know James Earl Jones. I love James Earl Jones. To me, when I see Mufasa, I hear James Earl Jones.
You know James Earl Jones?
I wish.
I thought you said you knew.
No, but you know what I mean? Like when I watch The Lion King, I hear James Earl Jones' voice. But when I watch Star Wars, I hear Vader's voice. I don't hear James Earl Jones.
That's true.
At all. Not to mention, I actually just rewatched the original voice acting from David Prowse.
Yeah.
And he's not menacing. He has a Scottish accent. It's the best.
I want them alive.
But yeah, to Travis, his design and concept.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Darth Vader, he's kind of like the only other iconic character that I can compare his look to is like Batman. The cape, the darkness. And in a lot of ways, they're very similar. Like you were mentioning, Victoria, they're based on samurai kind of characteristics. And so Vader, he really does have that presence, that fear-inducing presence of just a all black darkness. Like he's a monstrous demonic visage to anyone who encounters him. And not only that, but on top of that, he's a cyborg. And so it has this like sci-fi element intrinsically built into it, that he's human at his core, but only just it's dead human, and everything that's keeping him alive is cyborg. It's mechanical. And so it really gives you the idea that he's lost his humanity. He's just so robotic and heartless, cold. And that's the scariest thought, because that he doesn't care. He's lost everything there is to care about, and all he cares about is destruction. And you instantly understand that when you see him. So it's just brilliant design. And then when you have like his face, really it mimics kind of the sunken eyes of a skull, and so it really it gives you that unspoken language of death, and you're like looking at your own death when you're face to face with him. I love that. And so Vader, his all his buttons and stuff, it's like nobody knows what those are for.
Laser tag.
There's mystery involved. Yeah, laser tag.
Popcorn.
I always thought he made beats with those.
Yeah.
I like how you mentioned like the skull motif on his mask too, because like he could also be chalked up as like a visage of the Grim Reaper as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially juxtaposed with the white armor of the stormtroopers. It's it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know. Go ahead.
Sorry. In addition to that, you just reminded me of the what was it called? The Rising of Darth Vader. There was a novel. It's no longer canon, but it's very good. And it's the beginning of Vader being Vader. And it starts with him with his inner monologue of, I look with my eyes, but these are not my eyes. And I breathe with my lungs, but these are not my lungs. And and the end is this really living? And I don't. It's so cool. It's so cool. But I don't want to spend.
The conflict was there from the beginning.
Yeah.
Have you ever listened to the song "One" by Metallica? It's about a soldier who's lost all of his limbs and his eyesight, and he's just basically just on a hospital bed wishing for death. It's like that is Darth Vader, and until given the suit, and yet still every moment he lives, he's still feeling that pain of just wanting to die, and then that's what feeds his hate and anger. And I mean, it's no question as to why he's so powerful in the dark side because that feeds it every single moment of his life.
Yeah, actually, the Ninth Sister makes that same remark in the 2017 Vader comic, and yeah, I'm gonna pop that page up right here so people can see it on the YouTube later. But no, that's a great point. But moving on, I want us to briefly all talk about Anakin. This is about Vader, but we can't talk about Vader without touching on Anakin. And kind of your overall thoughts. Was he a whiny little punk, or
Yeah,
or
100%.
I mean,
I'm not even blaming the dialogue and the writing at this point, which like just the way they wrote the character in general. I don't know.
Are you including Clone Wars Anakin with that?
I'd say so at some points, yeah.
That's
but it is a little bit redeemed.
It is.
Yeah.
No, I mean my Anakin is Matt Lantern, but I do appreciate Hayden Christensen's portrayal, especially considering that George Lucas is famous for only giving one note to all his actors: faster and more intense.
Oh, more intense.
But Victoria, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so on the note of Hayden Christensen as Anakin, I really appreciate that in his portrayal of Anakin, he did intense study of James Earl Jones's voice patterns and his speech patterns and modeled his inflection after that. So I thought that was, really beautiful. But on the note of Anakin, I really think there was a beautiful moment in The Phantom Menace. By no means my favorite Star Wars movie, but there's a really beautiful moment in The Phantom Menace that I think like really captures the Anakin Vader moment for me. And it's when he first meets Padme and she asks him, "Are you a slave?" And he says, "No, my name is Anakin." And his assertion of identity there, and he says, "I'm a person and my name is Anakin." So his assertion of identity there and his attachment to his name being something like that can elevate him from where he is. At the time, he imagines himself as just being a pilot. But as we know through the portrayal of the story, he's the chosen one. He's supposed to be doing these large things and have this higher call. And then in Return of the Jedi, when Luke says, "I know your name was once Anakin Skywalker," and he says, "That name no longer has any meaning for me." I think that just like blew my mind, because it's like at the time of his youth, Anakin meant I can rise, I can be better, I am free. He's not a slave. But his name, Anakin, at that point, he was enslaved and he was tortured. He was at this low, he was Darth Vader. So that name meant nothing to him at that time. And so I don't know, I really, I appreciate the Anakin character. And yeah, that's all. I appreciate the Anakin character.
I will say that Matt Lanter makes it more acceptable to me.
Yeah, he was in this like teen drama show I watched, and he was this in 90210. He was so I knew him as that first, and then I saw Clone Wars Anakin, and I was like, no way.
That would change everything.
That changed everything. I do not recommend.
I have to Google it.
Suddenly he's the popular guy. Not Anakin.
No, for me, I mean, I did enjoy the character of Anakin, and I also, unlike a lot of people, this is kind of a tangent, but I like that they put Hayden Christensen back at the end of Return of the Jedi, because when I was little and I saw adult Anakin's Force Ghost, I had no idea who that was.
Especially when you're little, right? You're like, who's that guy?
Yeah, like what?
Yeah.
I saw Vader die. He looked like Mr. Potato Head.
I thought he looked like an old woman, kind of like with cancer or something. It's kind of sad.
You guys know this better than I do. You guys know this better than I do, but isn't like the creation of a Force ghost, don't you have to like reassemble yourself or something? Did I read that somewhere?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
wouldn't he reassemble himself as
the last person he remembered himself being Anakin, which
so
makes
I do appreciate Hayden Christensen at the end for that reason.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Anakin as whiny or whatever of a character as he was, the little bits in the Clone Wars where you saw that element of darkness, and on the surface of it, you hear the Jedi say, they're against attachment, and you're like, that's stupid, right? Of course you have to love. And then you watch it, and you watch how Anakin's great capacity for love is what corrupts him. I don't know, that kind of hit me, because as just in popular medium, it's love is all you need, but is that always true? I don't know.
I also like the dynamic that the Clone Wars showed with Obi-Wan and Anakin, in particular with the notion of love, because he talks about it with Obi-Wan when it comes to Satine, and he's like, Yoda warns us about attachments, and Obi-Wan's like, well, you also don't forget about the underpinnings of remorse. So that was a huge lesson, and that's why I was a Rey Kenobi person early on.
And that's why I love Obi-Wan so much, because Obi-Wan, to me, is still the example of the perfect Jedi. A lot of people look at Qui-Gon for that, but I also think Qui-Gon was also misguided. I see Obi-Wan having that same capacity for love and caring for absolutely everyone, whether it was Qui-Gon dying in his arms, Satine dying in his arms, or his enemy Maul dying in his arms. He cared for everyone out of principle, and I think that's what you're supposed to be, but that's a whole side topic. Travis, your thoughts on Anakin?
Okay. Anakin, okay, when we're talking about there's a lot of talk about the dichotomy of the Clone Wars Anakin versus the theatrical Anakin, and that they seem to be kind of different personalities. But I don't think that takes into account the fact that the movies take place within like very, very small time frames, and they're separated by decades. So, you have the child Anakin, and then you have episode 2 is like 19-year-old Anakin, and then episode 3 is almost 30-year-old Anakin. And so these are, and then when you have just episode 2 and 3, those are just 2 moments in his life. And they're very trying, emotional moments in his life. You have him having dreams about his mother getting killed and murdered, and he goes after to save her. Like, this is a huge emotional time in his life. And he's seeing Padme again for the first time, and he's having all these feelings of love, and it's kind of cheesy, but that's life. It's like, have you never felt like cheesy before? and I think that it's just a matter of, that's the moment in his life that was pivotal and ended up being in that movie. And then in the Revenge of the Sith, it's his transition into being Darth Vader, and Darth Vader is all pure emotion. He's tapping into the dark side, and that is the flaw of what leads you to the dark side, as Yoda taught us in episode 1. Fear and all of this anger and hate, like, these are all dark emotions. And so he's like, emo, like, and it's 2005, so here we go, everybody's all dissing him for being emo. But in the middle,
I would also like to take this to just say that both Travis and I were both very emo people. We were both in emo bands for years. And
we all were.
We went to lots of shows. It was the best.
Hey, emo's coming back.
We were all
I
at
just
one point in our lives the Anakin that said, "It's not fair."
Yeah.
That's my point, man. I mean, we all have we're human. We have emotions, and that really is what made Vader so scary, because he, even though he was feeding off the emotions to fuel his power, he was hiding, well, he was hiding a lot of the emotions that he had about, he's bearing his emotions about his children, about his love that he had lost, but all of that buried deep down it was just like a root system for his power, and it comes across as robotic, because he doesn't care about anyone else but himself and his own pain. um and so, but when you have the Clone Wars Anakin, he's being heroic, and he's being the true Anakin that was able to be redeemed at the end, the heroic Anakin that he always wanted to be, to free slaves from that kind of oppression, and we get to see that. That's why we love the Clone Wars so much.
Yeah.
And so there are two sides of Anakin, just like there are two sides to all of us, and it's, when we have control over our emotions and when we don't. And sadly for Anakin, it led to, his embracing the dark side. And that's, like Victoria was saying, is it's really, it's something that is within all of us that we need to keep in check. And it's an allegory for ourselves that we can look to really try to not go so far, and keep ourselves in check and in control.
It was
Yeah.
the chosen one expectation, really, and
Ah.
it rhymes with the Last Jedi, Luke. Because if you need to understand why he went into exile, you need to understand why Anakin fell. He was the chosen one, and every single failure in his life led to such a dramatic fall from grace. So once you're like on that pedestal, the fall is that much further.
Yeah, you're not allowed to fail, and to me, it just makes me think of how a lot of young people are treated right now, and of course when I was young too. But it was like, oh, you're 18, you don't know what you want to do for the rest of your entire life. And you're like, no, I what? I should know that now. No, no, you really shouldn't. But man, this is such an awesome conversation. But we're going a little long, so I want to go hit everyone really quick with this next one. All right, and we'll start with Travis. Anakin, Vader, two separate people, two different people.
Is that a question or a statement?
That's a question. Question: Are they two different people?
Oh,
I get this question a lot myself. So yeah, your thoughts.
I would say they are two different personalities, but I don't think they're two different consciousness. It's hard to. It's a yin and yang. It's the light and the dark of the same person, and yet at the same time, like we see in the Clone Wars, we see when Yoda faces his own darkness, the way he was able to pass that test was to stop fighting it and denying it and accepting it as part of him. And he absorbed it. And so it wasn't that he abolished it or completely threw it away, but he accepted it and recognized that it was a part of him that he needed to keep in control of. and Vader is the outward manifestation of that darkness in Anakin that he lost control over, that overtook him, overpowered him.
All right, that's good.
Until the end. Yeah.
Pep, two different people, same person?
I'm gonna cop out and say something different. He's two entities, two fragments of the same crystal. And it's kind of like building off of what Travis just said. He's like Anakin is the ego and Darth Vader is the superego. And I'd say Anakin trying to find the balance within himself between the two egos was what kind of made him fall, because he couldn't live with both. And so like the superego completely took him over. And yeah, sorry, I don't want to like ramble on. It was just two entities of the same person.
Okay, who's his id?
Padme.
Okay. Victoria? Same person, two people?
Yes and no. That's a really easy way for me to cop out of that completely. But I would say yes and no. Building off of everything that was already said, I think it's two evolutions or divergence of the same tree or person. So I think it's, I think that's why we say in certain moments we see Vader or we see Anakin, because we kind of do compartmentalize them as two evolutions of the same person. But I definitely think there is that convergence that I think they're trying to symbolize, and with his character having those two alternate manifestations, is that like it is two sides of the same human being and it is the same person. So yes and no.
That is a great point too, because when he
Like
stops Luke from striking down Palpatine, I call him Anakin there.
Yeah.
There's a quote. It's from a song and also from a book, I believe. It's two roads split out from here, dividing and the barrier between who I am and who I want to be.
Okay.
And it's from first to last.
It's apropos.
And Vader looks like he would listen to first to last. Kylo Ren as well. But I digress. So for me, I am, we're all essentially saying a lot of very similar things, but for me, it's one person, but Vader wants it to be two people. And that's what the problem is, because he can't truly make it two people. And he says it, Anakin was weak, so I destroyed him. And then, Luke's like, I sense the good in you. And he's like, it's too late for me.
There is no conflict.
So for me, it's one person, one through line. And as we read him in the comics, he tries to destroy anyone that knows who he's supposed to be because of his own personal shame. I think of the 2017 comic where he finally captures Jocasta Nu, and they're on a ship with a bunch of stormtroopers, and she's like, "I know who you are. You're Anakin Skywalker. This guy commanding you is a Jedi." And so Vader kills everyone on board that ship. He wants it to be one person, but he can't.
Yeah, there's several moments, dude, in the comics, like in the Star Wars, where he encounters Luke for the first time, and he picks up the lightsaber, and he's like, I recognize this lightsaber. And when he reports back to Palpatine, he's like, nope, nothing to report. Nothing at all.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said he was ashamed. Mm-hmm. He has deep shame over what he's become, and yet that he views it as hatred toward what he used to be, because it's constantly haunting him. And so that's why he says Anakin is dead. I killed him, and from a certain point of view that was true, and that point of view is Darth Vader's point of view.
Ooh.
And
I love how you say it, because it indicates, just like Victoria was saying earlier, that Darth Vader, even in scenes he's not in, he's this looming specter over everything. But from Vader's point of view, Anakin is this looming specter over everything. I don't know, that's just super cool.
Yeah, and that
I'd include Padme in that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that can happen, and it's a very real thing. I mean, it's exaggerated in Darth Vader's story, but just in reality, and all of us, we may know people, or we ourselves may have some, like what we used to be, like, the innocence we had as children, and it's like there's a deep psychology that this speaks to, and it's really interesting. I mean, even I had a conversation with my own mother like over 10 years ago, where I asked, we were going through a lot of emotional stuff I won't get into, but I was like, what happened to, the person I knew when I was a kid? And she's like, that person's dead. But then a few years later, she had she kind of like got through the issues that she was trying to work through. And there were very deep emotional issues that she had never really dealt with in her life. And then finally she was able to, and she got the help she needed. And it's like a whole new person, completely new. Like now she's the person that I knew when I was a kid. And so it's a real thing that happens in life that Vader really embodies in this fictional realm. And I think it's a beautiful story, because I've witnessed it firsthand, and seeing that beautiful possibility of redemption is awesome.
No, definitely. And it's just, just like we said, for everyone here, if there's things you don't deal with in your past, those past mistakes can become a looming specter over your life. That's a real thing. But okay, so real quick, we're gonna do two things. So we're gonna go around, start with Pep this time. Believe I'm supposed to start with you. I'm moving every time, but I lose track. So, all right. So, favorite Vader quote and favorite Vader moment. You can pull from anything.
Oh my gosh! Can you pick me last so I can?
All right. Well, Victoria got excited. I feel like she has something already in the chamber. Go for it.
I was gonna say I don't know. I can't pick, but if I have to pick, okay. So if I have to pick, I'd say I love the lyricism and repetition of all of Darth Vader's lines. So everything he says, you hear it again or you've heard it before. So like you were saying, everything rhymes. So I'd say the phrase, the power of the dark side, is probably my favorite thing to unpack. So I would say maybe that's my favorite Vader quote.
All right, so I have to make you go into the detail. I saw you did a TikTok video on it, and I need it said here, please.
Okay, so the first time he says the power of the dark side is when he's talking to Luke, and he is kind of like flexing, saying like the power of the dark side. The second time he says it is when he is speaking to Luke again in Return of the Jedi, and he says, you don't know the power of the dark side, I must obey my master. And so this illustrates kind of how he is subservient to the dark side. It's like the whole, like, the dark side doesn't serve you, you serve the dark side, that Momin says. And then the final time he says the power of the dark side is, again, he's speaking to Luke, and he's about to chuck his lightsaber at him, and Luke said, I will not fight you. And he says, you underestimate the power of the dark side, meaning it as a warning. So I think there's so much beauty in that parallel structure of the phrase, the power of the dark side. So the first time it actually means like the power of the dark side, but the other times are actually really sad. So I'd say the power of the dark side phrase is probably my favorite thing, like Vader quote. And it would be blasphemous if I did not say a cool Vader moment was the Rogue One hallway scene. It would be blasphemous if I did not mention that. I love everything about the duel on Bespin. Everything about it is beautiful. I don't want to get too heavy into that and all the symbolism of that duel, but like the fact that they end on the bridge when he mentions being Luke's father, bridges being a symbol throughout all of Darth Vader's character arc. I just love it. And then I'd say another moment is when he turns his respirator off in the comics when Tarkin is hunting him. I love it. I'm like, yes.
That was awesome.
And then when you kind of look inside his mindscape, when Silo turns his kill switch. Oh gosh, it's so beautiful and so terrifyingly awesome. And then the way he descends in Rebels. Oh, in Twilight. I just love it.
Twilight of the Princess is one of my favorite Star Wars things ever of all time. It's just it's beautiful. I'm gonna come back to Pep, see if you thought of one yet.
Okay, so the favorite quote, it will have to be kind of like a play off of Victoria's answer, which is, "You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master." And that's a very telling quote, because it's telling Luke, help me. Yeah. Because you don't know the power that I have to submit to, and I must obey my master. I don't want to kill you, you my boy, you know? And so he's literally warning him, like, you really don't know the power. Like, I'm not flexing on you. The power is real. I must obey my master. And as for the moment, I'm gonna give like an off the beaten path answer. I think my favorite moment came from his comic where he fought Kirak and Phila. And that was like a very trying time for him as Darth Vader, because he was Lord Vader. He had overcome Order 66 and he had eliminated the Jedi. And now this was this like remnant of the Order. This guy just took a pilgrimage and he was the battle master. And this was his first test as Darth Vader, because he still needed that lightsaber. And he got mollywopped, basically, like the first encounter. And then
chopped off and
yeah. And then having like the only way to defeat him was to be Darth Vader fully and take advantage of, you know, that guy's compassion.
Oh, I like that a lot. It reminds me a lot of Darth Kaitis in the EU, and how Jaina had to overcome, because she couldn't beat him because she fought like a Jedi. She had to learn how to fight other ways in order to beat him. For me, I'm gonna take a lot simpler approach than both of you.
No,
my favorite quote is sassy Vader. It's Vader talking to Lando going, "Do you feel you've been treated unfairly?" What do you say? No, not at all. It's cool. It's cool. Do whatever. Do you? I just love that quote, especially, I'm altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it further. Basically, you have no say here. I'm Vader. You're you. This is not supposed to be fair. That's not a thing that this is. And then as far as Vader moment, I did make a TikTok about it, but in the Lords of the Sith novel, and also in one of the comics, it's when he essentially is trying to board is trying to board a ship of the people from Ryloth, and all the normal places to board have been destroyed, and he knows if you wait for the Star Destroyer to come in, they're going to destroy the ship. So what he does is he ejects. His chute is pressurized, so he ejects from his ship, lets it make a hole into their ship, uses the Force to pull himself in, and
Leia style.
and terrorizes the ship. And when I say terrorize, I mean he kills the first person, picks up his comm, and just breathes into it. He doesn't say anything. He just
what did I say about the breathing?
And everyone on the bridge is like, this can't be good. And he killed everyone on the ship. So that's gotta be my favorite Vader moment. Travis?
Yeah. So one of my favorite Darth Vader quotes is most impressive. Like, that's a good one. And then also in Rogue One, where he says, careful not to choke on your aspirations. Critic. That's
a good one too.
And a lot of people made fun of that, and I was just like, why? It's amazing. Okay. Yeah. Okay, but my real favorite, I have two favorite moments. The first one is the Force. I mean, maybe this isn't a Vader moment, but I think it's a Vader moment. The Force cave on Dagobah, when Luke goes in and faces Vader, and it's a vision, of course, but it's the first encounter Luke has with Vader. He may not even have ever seen a picture of Vader before, and he sees this visage, and he's so frightened by it, and he cuts it down, and what does he see? He sees himself. And there's just so many onion-like layers to that scene that you see. It's part of Luke's story, and how he is liable to become Vader if he doesn't fight, if he doesn't, if he gives in, to this darkness that Vader himself gave into. He doesn't know he's his father yet, but it's a precursor to that revelation. So it's like he already knew it before he knew it.
Yeah.
And Vader is in that scene, for all of us who watched Star Wars for the very first time, episode 4 and 5, we're thinking like it's just a haunting scene for Luke, and we don't know much about Vader, and neither does Luke, and yet there's the once you see all of it, you understand. It's like, oh, it's his father, and it all makes sense. And like I said, there's just so many layers to it. But yeah. I wonder if Vader had anything to do with that at all. If there was some sort of mental thing going on with the Force connecting them already at that point.
And then I also I would say, I would be remiss if I also didn't mention another just amazing moment for me is in their Vader and Luke's fight in Return of the Jedi. Luke does a backflip up onto the platform behind, and he has the high ground, and then Vader's like, I see Obi-Wan has taught you well. And then he just throws his lightsaber.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh God, it's just hilarious to me.
I have another one that's like not serious at all, but in A New Hope, when he goes, "What?" I just love that moment. The way he says, "What?" I lose my mind every time. It has no Lars larger significance other than it's just funny.
Yeah.
Also, his cape throw when he's like,
Yeah.
I sense a presence, and he's like, he throws his cape and like
Yeah.
leaves
So
dramatically.
dramatic. He's
And
so
that's, but that's so
I love that.
Anakin. Anakin is that
Yeah.
dramatic.
I love the
Yeah.
No.
And I love that he doesn't even finish the sentence. He just leaves it with an ellipsis. Like, I
Yeah.
sense a presence I have not sensed since. He just like runs away.
And the
And the way he,
stormtroopers are like, should. Well, we survived, so it's a good day.
so good.
Well, what I was to finish my thought, the other Vader moment that I love is actually in Revenge of the Sith when Anakin, he's already been deemed Darth Vader, and he is sent to Mustafar to destroy those separatists, the Neimoidians, and all of the droids, and he's just like hacking them all. And I mean, it's a really gruesome scene. And then you have that shot of him just looking back at the camera with the red and yellow eyes, and the emotion in his face is like, I mean, he's looking straight at the camera, but he's not looking at us as the audience. It's not meta. He's looking back at all the people that he just killed and looking like at the Emperor with hatred for making him do it. And yet he knows he has no choice. And it's just
dark side.
It's just it's such a powerful scene, and I love that.
Awesome point. I mean, especially if you watch, that film, and the music that's playing at that scene is actually the basis for Kylo Ren's music. If you listen to Kylo Ren's theme, it starts with the music that is playing when Anakin is looking with his Sith eyes out over Mustafar, which, oh my goodness, I just love. And then also, you just remind me of this really stupid moment from the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which is one of my favorite reads. Anakin walks in there. Of course, this is after he's been named Vader and is slaughtering people. And then one of the women on the Separatist Council says, but Lord Sidious promised us a handsome reward. And he says, you don't think I'm handsome?
No way. He says that.
That's it. That's in the novelization. I will put the page up here. Pep knows. Pep remembers. It just makes me laugh because it's such a stupid line. But
that was Anakin.
You don't consider me handsome?
You don't think I'm handsome?
Okay, so
you always had a
there
good
was
way about it.
there was conflict and/or light in Vader. At least that's what Luke was able to see. This is another lightning round, so we'll go around. We'll start with Victoria. I know we started with you last time, but it was supposed to be Pep's turn, and I'm just going to keep going with that. But supposed to be light in him. My question is, was that light always there? Or was he all dark and then gradually came back to the light? Or how does that work, that light and conflict? Victoria?
I'd say the light is always there, but I also don't want to dismiss the actual ominous, crushing darkness either. Or like the actual pressure of the darkness and the like overwhelming presence of darkness. So I'm not diminishing that at all when I say I think the light was always there. But I think the darkness was really, really powerful. And I guess, yeah, that's kind of all I gotta say about that.
For me, I feel like the darkness, it's like the door was slammed,
Yeah.
when he decided to become Vader, and I believe that it only was like when he found out that he had a son that was alive.
Yeah.
That's my theory. Is that's when the light came
Yeah.
back. I feel like when you're murdering children, there's no light. But that's just me. I don't judge. I mean, in that case, you should judge, but still. Good. Travis, was there always light there?
I'd like to say yes. I believe there's embers within his heart. It's just they're so buried. They're buried so deeply, and he's made a concerted effort to bury them. And I mean, the darkness is the opposite of light. It's being devoid of light. So, I mean, as far as physics is concerned, if there's darkness, then there's no light. But we're not talking about physics. We're talking about, psychology. So I think in Vader there is light, and I've written fan fiction that's it's like what I would want to see as a Kenobi film or series, with my friend or my cousin Sean. But Vader is he's the antagonist, and it's very much a Vader story as much as it is a Kenobi story. And in this story, there's a MacGuffin, if you will, that's like an ancient Jedi relic. And when it's in contact with anyone, it reveals their true nature, what's deep inside their heart. And if they're truly evil, it's going to reveal that. And if they're truly good, it's going to reveal that. So there's a moment where Vader is in contact with this relic, and it actually, for a moment, relinquishes him from the darkness, and you see Anakin again. And Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are involved, and it's very much like a callback to the Rebels moment with Anakin and Ahsoka. And so what I'm saying is that I believe that it's there deep down within him, but in my fan fiction, it's only revealed through an artificial means. So once that thing is knocked away from him, it's like he's totally dark again. So it's and that's what tells Kenobi that there's nothing left with he's completely evil. Through that experience, he's just like, no, there's no chance. But that's my own headcanon. But still, I'm saying, I believe there's some light in him that eventually we see come out.
So what you just it reminds me of a comic book where from DC, where the big three are all holding on to Wonder Woman's lasso in order to reveal their true identity. And Superman says, "I'm Clark Kent," and Wonder Woman says, I am Diana Prince," and then Batman says, "I am Batman." It's
Yep.
just I just like that. Pep, is there any light in there?
Yes. There's always been light, and it's always going to be there no matter how small it was. And this goes back to our discussion about balance. There cannot be one without the other. There's just one of them is just, overpowering the other. And building off of what Travis said, there's embers. I kind of see it as, his light side is just a small kindling that's just waiting to be sparked. And of course, Luke being there, the spark is Padme's spark, right? And that, not to plug my own book, but it's one of the lines from the book, which was Ahsoka saying, I wanted to help, but in the end, I thought I couldn't do anything about it. Only Padme's last legacy could spark that kindling that brought Anakin back. But we also have a lot of examples of Anakin creeping through, like in the comics and in the movie, where he's always been there, right? And so, like we've been discussing in this whole podcast, Vader is just trying to snuff him out, but he can't completely extinguish it. So when we go into his mind space, on his fortress, he sees a lot of his old memories, a lot of Anakin, which he's supposed to have let go. He sees Padme. He wants to save her still. So yeah, it's always been there.
Yeah. This is why I love talking to you guys every week about this stuff, because as soon as Travis said the word ember, I knew I was wrong. It was like, damn it. Yes, it is an ember. There was a fire there. The fire has been put out, but there are these coals there that are still Anakin, and it takes very little to relight that fire. And yeah, so I'm wrong, but that's okay. that's
from
what
a certain
what
point of view.
Okay, so moving on. So we've established, yes, there has been this little crack of light that's always been in there. But let's talk about his redemption, and we'll start with Victoria.
Okay, so his redemption is just like, oh God, it's so beautiful. I guess I'll talk about the duel on Bespin and what it means for his redemption to me. Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just no, don't talk about Bespin. Don't talk about that here.
Of course.
So okay, so the duel on Bespin, we kind of see that last scene, and they're on the like bridge structure, and Luke kind of is descending, or at the moment he gets onto the bridge, he says, "You are beaten. It is pointless to resist." And I think he's talking to Luke, but he's also talking to himself, because, and I'll say why. So the bridge, in any moment of Darth Vader and Anakin's character development, bridges are there, like the actual structure of a bridge. So when he's talking to Luke and says, "No, I am your father," it's like Luke's identity changes. Bridges represent change, communication, etc. But he's changing Luke's identity to us right there. And he's also changing his own. He becomes his father, not just Darth Vader. And when he acknowledges him as his father, as being his father, that is the first kind of spark of Anakin, because that is his part of his new identity. And so I don't know, I kind of love that moment. And then I made a video about this, just again, stop me when I ramble, but when he says father and son, so he says we can rule the galaxy together as father and son. Luke throws himself into oblivion, doesn't want any of that. Then when they communicate, he said, Luke immediately shoots up and says father, calls him father, does not call him Vader, calls him father. And then there's a long pause in which I think there is so much said. And then Vader says son. And I just, that acceptance, that like, oh, beautiful, heart-wrenching moment. So I think that's kind of some sparks to his redemption to me, as like the most significant point to me. But there's obviously tons of moments we see Anakin. But I think to me,
why do you want me to cry?
I love crying.
I actually felt
it's an onion, Brandon. It's an onion.
I
You're
felt
gonna
tears
cry.
welling up. So I'm thinking about that moment.
I appreciate it, because then my answer is going to be pale in comparison.
Oh, y'all are so great.
Yeah, no, I also now feel inadequate, but
No, I feel so inadequate to you guys.
No, I love what you said about the bridges. It's like there's bridges bridging the gaps between these people and the transitions. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
And there's an album by Robin Trower called Bridge of Sighs. And it's really emotional. And I don't know why I just mentioned that. But it's my
well, so the thing that stands out to me is before Luke and Vader go up in the elevator to the throne room, when Luke is like, I feel the conflict in you, Father. Let go of your hate. He says it really rushed and like, I don't know, it makes me laugh every time. But Vader says, it's too late for me, son. So him saying son acknowledges the family connection, right? He's not. This is just not just another dissident, that needs to be destroyed. And it also, Luke goes to strike down the Emperor after Emperor's goading. And at this point, it connects when you watch Rise of Skywalker as to this potentially being Palpatine's plan. Is he needs a perfect host. And that could be Luke. Luke goes to strike Palpatine down, and Vader stops him. And you think back to him saying, it's too late for me. And you think, I'm saving you from this pain. And to me, that's that's the redemption. And then, and then of course that leads to the, let me look upon you with my own eyes. But you'll die. Nothing can stop that now. Also, side note, someone else in the comment was like, how come no one else that was running around like noticed Vader and Luke like lying there on the ground? That's because this isn't the first Death Star that was destroyed, and getting out of Dodge is probably those people's main.
Yeah, they don't care. They don't care about Vader.
First of all, if Vader is lying there, you run, because either A, something bad is about to happen, or B, Vader's going to get up, and if you saw his weak moment, you're dead. So that's just another thing. But yeah, that's what I think of when I think of his redemption. Travis?
Wait, what's the question? It's about his redemption?
Yeah, just Vader's redemption.
Vader's redemption. It's really, it's that spark of hope for everyone. In your darkest moment, when you think, there's no turning back, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and Vader, he's like the most villainous villain, and yet he was able to just put away all of that and embrace the light, even though it was on his deathbed, basically. It just shows that it's never too late, and you may be on death's door, but if you say, in your heart, you're sorry for everything you've done wrong, whatever it is, that's very meaningful, and that is what the redemption is. It's redemption.
Your past does not define you.
Yeah. It's how you feel about your past. And if you're like, man, I'm so glad I killed all those people. Oh my God, I'm the best. I'm talking to me when I say, oh my God, then great, no redemption. You're Palpatine. But Vader, he really, he was just weak in a lot of ways. As powerful as he was weak, and it was the weakness that led to his power. And yet, if he were powerful, he would have not embraced the power.
No, actually, what you said actually reminds me a lot of from the Aftermath books when Palpatine is talking to Raxus. Is it Raxus? I believe it is. And basically, yes. And he essentially, they play a bunch of different, play chess and different variations of it. And the difference between when Vader died, he wanted to leave a positive legacy. Palpatine had a contingency plan, and basically playing these games like chess, he asked him, do you know why when the king dies you wipe the rest of the board? It's because everyone else deserves to die for failing to protect the king. And that just is like, okay, yeah, he's a bad egg. We'll just say that.
The Emperor will not outlive me.
Yes. But Pep, your thoughts?
I think his redemption started after Order 66. And that's because when he got his Kyber crystal and tried to bleed it the first time, he actually had a vision of him not bleeding it, killing Palpatine, saying, yes, I have made my decision, and then went to beg Obi-Wan for forgiveness. And I don't think these visions are just one-offs. I think these are deep-rooted desires. But of course, he doesn't know the power of the dark side until later on. But it starts from there, and then there's little moments peppered in the comics where he's just not telling Palpatine the whole truth about what he's experiencing. Doesn't tell him about Luke Skywalker. And there are several moments where he just shows rebellious nature towards Palpatine. He wants to just attack him out of anger. And so I think those small moments, his redemption is an amalgamation of several smaller moments that was just Anakin reaching out and screaming out for help. And all it took was Luke to finally,
Hero.
Finalize it. Yeah, hero. Yeah.
Whew. Sorry, this is right along, but this conversation is so good. It's
Can I just say I love how each one of us is reflecting Vader in some way, shape, or form. Victoria, she's in his
meditative
chamber. Meditative.
Wish
chamber.
I had a spinny chair.
I'm wearing him on my shirt inside the Millennium Falcon, where I don't think he's ever stepped foot. Am I wrong?
Well, I think he.
Can you correct me if I'm wrong?
Did he step onto it in The New Hope? The first time they landed?
I don't think so.
This might be the first time.
That's good. That's a good question.
Pepito. Sorry, Pep. You're in the Jedi Council chamber.
We still do not grant him the rank of master.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't. I don't know why people don't understand. He was not ready to be a master. He's really good in war. He's really good at killing people. And you're like, but that's not the point. That's not what makes a good master.
I think the disparity here is a lot of people put a huge importance on the rank, but they don't realize that many Jedi in Legends, because that's our only source of history right now, have done their greatest deeds as knights.
Yes.
Satele Shan was just a knight. Bastilla was just a knight during the not a hyperspace war, but during her, what is it called? The events of KOTOR. Playing it again to refresh my memory, but By
the way, that's the best ship in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Bastilla Revan.
Oh, the ship. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Not the Millennium Falcon.
No, yeah, no, you confused me. I was like, Ebonhawk? Like, that's not a special ship.
Ebon Hawk is pretty cool too.
But like Ahsoka too, never made it tonight. Never made it tonight. Kanan trained Ezra, was still a Padawan. So like, stop saying it's not fair. It's you're good, right? You're a Jedi Knight. You're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Brandon, you're on Mustafar.
Oh yeah, no, that's
right in front of his castle.
Yeah.
How's the weather?
It's getting better year by year. No, if you play the game Vader Immortal, they actually explain what happened to Mustafar.
Oh yeah.
And the events of the game indicate the eventual healing of the planet. And so when you see the planet, when I'm here from Rogue One, it's better than it was in Episode 3. And then when you see it again in the opening of Rise of Skywalker, it's much better. You know, there's trees. I think it's really cool how they were able to tie all those together and make, like, it's super random and it doesn't add or change anything, but it shows that they care. You know, I think that's super cool.
Yeah. And I was gonna say that right now it's not showing, but there was like there's like a ray of light that was like reflecting on you. Are you sitting in front of a?
Yeah, I have a window with blinds with the little slats.
Oh yeah, so every once in a while, yeah, there's a little ray of light on your shoulder right now, and it's like, and
symbolic of Vader's light.
We all know Vader's black. You know, like James Earl Jones played him.
Yeah, actually, so when I was little and I'd play Star Wars with my friends, I was never allowed to be a Jedi because Luke Skywalker was white. No, my friends were white, right? So I could be. So they told me I could be Lando or Chewbacca, and I was like, "Screw you, I'm Vader," and that ended that real quick. So let's talk about this is. I know we're going along. This is essentially the last like major topic. The Skywalker legacy / curse. Right? We have it starts with Anakin, right? Because we know that Shmi wasn't the Phantom Menace. Although I would like to watch that cut of the movie for sure. But
I had a theory that Rey was Shmi, that she like time traveled back and became Shmi. That was my theory. But, you know,
that's because you watched you were watching 12 Monkeys. Anyways, so we saw Anakin be the Jedi's greatest hope and the chosen one, to their downfall and the greatest darkness of the galaxy, to the person that actually fulfilled the prophecy. We saw Luke is the next person to carry on the Skywalker legacy. Now, Leia was just as much as a Skywalker, but I wouldn't necessarily say that she carried on the same legacy, right? Where Luke was the champion of the light, but had his own struggles with the darkness. Kylo Ren was born steeped in darkness, and overall, the Skywalker legacy ended up being handed down to Rey. So I just wanted to kind of go around and talk about this Skywalker legacy being either a, the legacy or a curse, in regards to Luke, Kylo Ren, or Rey, and start with Travis.
Okay. No, like Skywalker it's both a legacy and a curse, I think. In the sense that, I mean, just the name itself, Skywalker, it evokes an image of someone who's rising above, who's flying, in a sense, above, in the clouds, is angelic, and so it's like the most heroic name in a way, and and so it's a cursed name because of the darkness that really happens to Anakin, and it always follows him. It follows Luke, and it follows Kylo Ren. It's just this, it becomes a curse later on, as Leia is found out that Vader was her father. It really besmirks her name, and so it's really sad, and it's a tragedy, and that's what Star Wars always has been, is this tragedy. It's like Shakespearean, and it's a fall from grace, and it's this idea of being something that's meant to be the chosen one, something that is the best of the best, and falling from that to be the lowest of lows. And so Skywalker it's an ambitious name that, like, can anyone live up to it? And that's really the ultimate test for everyone who bears that name, is, can I live up to the name of Skywalker?
Yeah.
And Luke succeeds, Rey succeeds, Kylo succeeds, Anakin succeeds, and it's just the challenge and the process of the it's not something that's easily achieved, that name, living up to it, but it's something that's possible, and everyone succeeds at it. And so I think that's the message that we all can take away from it.
Oh, I like that a lot. Pep, your thoughts?
So, if you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, the legacy of the Skywalkers is hope, and the curse of the Skywalker name is sacrifice. Because every time they've instilled hope into the galaxy, there's always been a huge sacrifice, no matter which direction it was going, right? So when Anakin fell, the sacrifice was all of the people that were lost and the galaxy itself. And then when he got redeemed, hope was restored, but he had to sacrifice himself for that. And then I don't know where I'm going with this.
Hope.
It's all about like keeping up hope, but their ultimate curse was sacrifice. And I found it almost kind of poetic that Kylo was the one to break that curse, in a sense. And we've talked about this before, but I'll say it again. Part of their curse of sacrifice is their progeny to begin with, which was the Force. So if all we're going off is all is as the Force wills it, then that means they were there for a specific reason. They were there to make sacrifices, restore hope, and restore balance. And once that is all done, you no longer get to exist. And that's a little harsher way of putting it, but at the end of the day, all of the Skywalkers return to the Force that created them. And it did so on the heels of Ben ending the curse of sacrifice by saving the one he loved and finishing what Anakin started. And that's just beautiful to me.
Yeah, I loved your TikTok. Like, it blew my mind of I will finish what you started. I don't know if you don't mind reiterating that here briefly.
Yeah, I mean, didn't I just say it?
I mean, you did.
So Kylo Ren is basically saying, like, to Mask of Vader, I'm gonna finish what you started, right? And Anakin, the whole reason for living for him in the prequels was to save Padme and save his mother from not dying, or essentially save the one you love from dying. Kylo says, "I will finish what you started," and at the very end, he saves Rey, the one he loved.
Yeah.
I just like that. It wasn't explicitly stated. Anyways, I apologize. But Victoria?
So
Same?
I love everything that you guys just said. So just to reiterate that, that's exactly what I think. I want to kind of like take a different route though. So I love how Star Wars challenges legacy, because, you know, legacy is number one, an inherently masculine thing, but an inherently elite thing as well. So Skywalkers were nobody. They were less than nobody. They didn't have an identity. They were slaves. And so it's like kind of that strip of identity first and foremost, and then how they kind of expand this legacy not only to not the elite, but not the masculine. So like Leia being included in the Skywalker legacy is important to me. How they say like the conversation that Luke and Leia have on Endor, like the Force is strong in my family, like saying that she's included too. That was really beautiful. And so just statements on legacy in general are so, you know, woven through Star Wars. And then with the addition of Rey into the Skywalker legacy, just kind of being like what you pick up, not what's handed to you. There's just so many cool statements on legacy throughout Star Wars as it is. But I think as far as the Skywalker legacy, as you both mentioned, it's a legacy of hope, possibility, and ambition, being more than what you are, more than what you're made to be, and more than what you imagine yourself to be. And so I think that that's kind of cool to take onto ourselves, and like we want to be more and do more and answer those higher calls. And so I think that would be perhaps my like take on the Skywalker legacy, the call of possibility. And then as far as the Skywalker curse, I was having a really tough time saying like what the Skywalker curse was, but just the notion of sacrifice was really beautiful to me. And so I kind of want to just piggyback on that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I love that as
Midichlorians.
well.
That's the curse. Midichlorians.
I love like finding parallels between Leia and Anakin Vader character, and just there's so many beautiful ones. And so I just love that idea of finding parallels between the two of them. And so I don't know, I love including like Leia in legacy too.
Yeah, and if Leia had been trained instead of Luke, I don't think we would have had any problems.
You know, I just learned that in a comic, it reveals that Leia met Vader before Luke did.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
Well, I mean, she met him on the Tantive before as well.
No, well, okay. But before that.
Yeah.
You're a member of the Rebel Alliance, and yeah.
But I would like to amend.
I'm Dad.
I would like to amend a little bit the answer. The continued legacy of Skywalker now, as the curse has been broken by Ben, is to represent everything the Jedi should have been, and this goes hand in hand with my theory about what Skywalker meant in Rise of Skywalker, because it doesn't say Rise of a Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
It was Rise of Skywalker, preceded by The Last Jedi. And so in my mind, I'm like, the fall of Jedi, the rise of Skywalker. Skywalker is the new name for Jedi. You're no longer recruiting younglings into the Jedi Order. You're recruiting them into the Skywalker Order.
And I really do. I really hope they stick with that. That's what I kind of got out of it too. For me though, you know, the Skywalker legacy was Anakin was, and I want to apologize for not necessarily including Leia into it. My thought wasn't fully formed until everyone spoke, and then I actually now have more. So being a Skywalker was being the best of the best. It's being the hope of the galaxy. It's about being the light and a beacon. And when you read the current Thrawn trilogy, there's a force sensitive. There are young girls that are force sensitive among the Chiss, and they don't have in the outer rim. It's really hard to navigate through hyperspace, right? The lanes aren't mapped and things like that. So they have force sensitive young girls. They call them Skywalkers, and they're the Navigators because they lead the way. They are the beacon, the light, the hope. And seeing that Anakin was for the Jedi, their beacon, their light, their hope. He fell, right? That was the curse. Luke rose up. It was the rebels' beacon, their light, their hope. He succeeded. Now, in trying to create a new Jedi Order, he fell into the same trap. You know, if you're basing it off of the old Jedi and you do everything how they did, you're going to run into the same problems that they did. And that was, again, part of the curse. Now, the overall message is that the legacy is not your birthright. You have to do the thing in order to carry on the legacy. For Kylo Ren, he's like, do you know who I am? He's like, I was named after Ben Solo. My mom's Princess Leia. My dad's, my uncle. He has all these legacies laid upon him. He should be, space Jesus or whatever. But he didn't live up to it. Not till someone else showed him the way, and that was Rey. And both Leia and Luke saw that, and that's why both of them wanted her to carry on the Skywalker legacy, and she did. And yeah, that's my thoughts on the legacy and the curse. But I'll stop it with that. But I'm going to clip that and make that another video because I felt like I was on fire there. So, awesome.
Next time someone argues against a Skywalker.
Okay, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I want to do any last thoughts, anything else you want to say, and also where can we find you? We'll start with Travis.
I guess last words would be, to quote Yoda, "There's another Skywalker."
That's good.
On point.
You can find me on Instagram at The Time Trav, on SoundCloud at The Time Traveler with one L, and here next week maybe.
And Pep?
Final word. The new Taika Waititi film. I want it to be Fortress Vader with Momin and him bleeding his crystal in that story. So if that's
That'd be cool.
a thing, I'm in 100%. You can find me on TikTok _element7_ Instagram at elementxstyle, and on Twitter at element7x spelled out. And that is it.
And also, Pep is working on a project for Star Wars.
Yeah. So I'm writing an audio drama called Star Wars Echoes of the Past. It is 5 years after the rise of Skywalker. I don't know if this is really a spoiler or not, but Mandalorians and everything. But yeah, you could follow that project on Twitter, #Echoes of the Past, and on TikTok, #Echoes of the Past. And I'm still accepting auditions as well.
Yes. Awesome.
Sounds awesome.
And Victoria, final thoughts, and where can we find you?
Oh man, final thoughts. Any problem is surmountable, and I think Darth Vader kind of shows us that. And we all like his impact is that darkness can be conquered. I think that's really important for us to remember right now. Hope in a hopeless world. And then there was something I wanted to say. One of the topics in the outline was things most people don't know.
Please say it.
I want to say I found really obscure things, but all of you probably know it. So, okay, I'm going to read this so that I don't go crazy. So in the late 80s, there was a PTA campaign nationwide that addressed the fact that children were scared of firemen because of Darth Vader. And so there was like an ad campaign released that was basically using that Lucasfilm signed off on, that like Darth Vader is not the fireman. Don't hide from the firemen. I thought that was kind of really interesting because that just shows the impact of him on the imagination. So there was an actual PTA campaign involving Darth Vader. And then 2 bugs are named after Darth Vader in the official Latin scientific nomenclature, which is really cool, I think. There's a beetle species and a wasp species named after Darth Vader. The wasp species actually does have some competition, though, because there's the Chewbacca wasp and the Yoda wasp variety.
What?
That's pretty cool.
Did not know that.
So I thought that was pretty crazy. But again, my name is Victoria. It's Victoria, y'all. That's not IT''S. I know, grammar. It's ITS because of the name thing. ITS, Victoria, y'all. That's YALL for y'all other people outside the South. And then I'm on TikTok and Instagram. And maybe YouTube. I don't know. We'll see about that one day. That's
awesome.
it.
Well, I hope you do a YouTube because your insights here far exceeded my expectations. It was awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. Additionally,
most impressive.
There's actually a section of just outside of Vegas, and I discovered this by accident, by actually being there. I had friends in Henderson. There's a whole neighborhood, and all of the street names are named after Star Wars, right? So there's a Vader, there's a Tarkin Street, there's a I'm gonna overlay the whole map on this page.
Amazing.
It's
I'm
actually
gonna move there.
I'm gonna be on Vader Street.
It's pretty hilarious.
I'll live on Dagobah.
There's Skywalker Drive and whatnot.
I'll live on Salacious Crumb Way.
But yeah, so I am Darth Choco or Darth Chocolate, pretty much everywhere, also known as Big Black Nerd, black spelled BLAQ. It's a stylistic choice. Anyways, I'm going to leave everyone's links down in the description below, but awesome conversation, guys. I know we ran long. We always do, but this was amazing. Thank you so much for joining me, and may the Force be with you always.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. Thank you.
May the Force be with you.